struck me that looking at the hymn of invitation, Is Thy Heart Right with God, and then that hymn we just sang, Standing on the Promises, the implication is that there's something we can read and know that we are in fact standing on the promises. And if we're standing on the promises, we can answer the question, is thy heart right with God, in an affirmative way. Yes, we can know that. And we can know that we know. Hereby we do know that we know him. We keep his commandments. 1 John chapter 2, verse 3 through 5. Let's see. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I count 14. You counted yet? Okay. This evening's lesson is entitled Spiritually Redirecting the Mind. And again, having conversations with folks, you get to thinking about what you talk about in Bible class and everything. And how do we get people to rethink their position, to reconsider who and what they are from a spiritual perspective? And I tell you, I don't have any magic answers to that, and this is really my own thoughts on the thing. It's like the old jukeboxes. You got the record in there, push D5, and the record comes out, and every once in a while you get one that has a scratch on it, and it sticks in that groove, and you have to come up and slap the side of the record player to move the needle. Sometimes we've got to slap people upside the head to move the needle. I'm not saying this is the answer. This is an answer. Anyways, spiritually redirecting the mind. Romans chapter 8. There's therefore now no condemnation to them which are in Christ Jesus, who walk not after the flesh, but after the Spirit. For the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus hath made me free from the law of sin and death. That's an important concept. For what the law could not do in the law of Moses, in that it was weak through the flesh, God sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh, and for sin, condemned sin in the flesh. He lived perfectly. He kept the law of God perfectly. That the righteousness of the law might be fulfilled in us, who walk not after flesh, but after Spirit. In other words, the fulfillment of prophecy. The old law of Moses and the prophets and the Psalms, prophesied of Christ and the coming new dispensation. For they that are after the flesh do mind the things of the flesh, but they that are after the Spirit, the things of the Spirit. For to be carnally minded, fleshly minded, is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace. Because the carnal mind is enmity against God, for it is not subject to the law of God, neither indeed can be, as a carnal mind. It just rejects the law of God as the carnal mind. So they that are in the flesh cannot please God. And that's true. As long as they're living that fleshly life, they'll never please God. They don't want to. They have no concern about keeping God's law. But ye are not in the flesh, but in the Spirit, if so be that the Spirit of God dwell in you. Now if any man have not the Spirit of God, he is none of his. As I think about that, Ephesians chapter 2 and verse 1, and you hath he quickened who were dead in trespasses and sins. They had the carnal mind. At one point, they were carnally minded. They had no desire, no intentions, no want to please God. They had no desire, no interest in the law, the spiritual law of life in Christ Jesus, until somebody sat with them and changed their minds. Okay, that's what this lesson's about. Now, the souls of accountable persons, and I guess we could discuss when somebody reaches the age of accountability. Sometimes it's younger, sometimes it's a little bit older. 11, 12, 13 years of age is when kids start coming around to that. In Bible camp, that's when you see kids starting to respond to, if nothing else, respond to the gospel, and if not doing that, they're giving in to the pressure of their friends and so forth. But generally between 11 and 13 years of age, kids start thinking about their spiritual soul. They fall into one of two categories. One's soul is either in darkness or it's in the light. Now we're talking about accountable souls. Colossians 1:13, who hath delivered us from the power of darkness, and hath translated us into the kingdom of his dear Son. Matthew chapter 7:13, enter ye into the strait gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because strait is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it. It's a tough road to hoe. To find it and then decide you want to follow it. That's kind of a narrow way. That's going to put some pressure on me. I'm going to have to cut some things off that I like to do. And they said, well, I guess I just won't do it because I like doing this, that, or the other thing. 1 John 1:6, if we say that we have fellowship with him and walk in darkness, we lie and do not the truth. So there's that idea of the carnal mind of being transformed from one to the other. Now, as a consequence of all this, all accountable souls are either servants of righteousness or unrighteousness, with the deciding factor on being how we deal with the desires of the flesh and of the mind. How do you deal with it? Romans chapter 6, Paul says, know ye not that to whom ye yield your servants to obey, his servants you are to whom you obey, whether of sin unto death or of obedience unto righteousness. It's one or the other. There's no third possibility. You're either following the way of righteousness or you're following the way of darkness, the way of fleshly desires. There's just no third possibility. Well, I'm just not going to get involved. That's a choice, but it's number two. It's not number one. It's not following the spirit of life in Christ Jesus. So our task is that of Paul in Acts chapter 26. As a matter of fact, that's a passage you might want to just kind of make note of. Not going to read the whole thing, but in Acts chapter 26, he's before the king, and he's to Agrippa, and he's telling him about the events on the road to Damascus. In chapter 9, the Lord appears unto him. Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? And so forth. Who art thou, Lord? He says in verse 15, I am Jesus, whom thou persecutest, but arise and stand upon thy feet, and for I have appeared unto thee for this purpose, to make thee a minister and a witness both of these things which thou hast seen, and of those things in which I will appear unto thee. Future context there. Delivering thee from the people and from the Gentiles, unto whom now I send thee. Why? To open their eyes and to turn them from darkness to light and from the power of Satan unto God, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and inheritance among them which are sanctified by faith that is in me. Now, how did Paul do that? And we're going to look at it here in a little bit. Every time somebody was converted by Paul, was baptized by Paul, it came after he had preached them the truth, the gospel. There was no hocus pocus, abracadabra, no laying on of hands, and somebody was suddenly converted. The Holy Spirit didn't fall down on any of those folks and suddenly convert them from the error of their ways. It was not until Paul had taught them the gospel, sometimes over the course of a long period of time. So we must do what Paul did in Athens, in Acts chapter 17, verse 16 through 31. Now in verse 17, it says he disputed. Now we need to understand what this means in context. By definition, it's to say thoroughly, that is to discuss in argument or exhortation, to dispute, to preach, to reason. It's not a yelling and screaming at each other. It doesn't solve anything. I tell people when I get in the Bible study with them, we're not going to yell and scream. We're going to have a discussion. You can disagree with me, tell me I'm wrong. You can show me. If you can demonstrate to me, I want you to show it to me from book, chapter, and verse, taken in context, harmonizing with other scriptures. I said, but we will not yell and scream at each other. We're just not going to do that. It doesn't solve anything. Now, when you start showing people the truth, they get upset. Now, some of them are stunned. Some of them just really get upset. But notice his plans. It was to the Jews first. If you look at Acts chapter 17, he went to the Jews first. He went to the synagogue before he did anything else. Romans 1:16. For I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God to salvation to the Jews first and also to the Greeks. So he went to the Jews first, without except. Well, I'm going to say that. I'm going to say without exception. Somebody's going to give me one, but almost without exception, I'll say, he went to the synagogues first before he did anything else. And then he went to all these. Then he went to the devout persons, and then publicly with interested persons. What are you talking about? What you're saying is kind of. I've never heard this before. Tell me about it. Well, how do you interest people? I made mention in Bible class this morning a Bible study program that Jerry and I attended when we were in Alabama, Fishers of Men, and I'd recommend the program. It's a good process, and it gives you little pamphlets to use, and you ask questions. You ask people questions, and again we talked about it this morning. For instance, should Christians keep the Sabbath day holy? Should we as Christians observe the Sabbath day to keep it holy like Israel did? And you let them answer. Now, as I said it this morning, one of the things they told us in that class is when you're, say, at work, and you don't have time to really sit and talk with somebody, as you walk past them, you might say, Raymond, and you ask that question. You just ask Raymond the question as you walk past her and say, I'll talk to you later. And she's standing there thinking about that question. And well, of course we do. Then, well, how do you know that? Which covenant, the old or the new, should we keep today, and why? Some folks don't even know there's a difference. Well, isn't it just all the Word of God? Well, it's all the Word of God, sure. But which part are we looking at? Well, what do you mean which part? See, there's your conversation starter. So we ask questions. There's other questions we come up with. And that really depends upon who you are and the folks you're going to be talking to as to what, you listen to them. You listen to what they have to say in conversation. And I've said this before, politics, whatever your politics are, is an expression, a public expression of your privately held religious worldview. So whether you think any action is right or wrong, that tells me, if we asked a series of 10 questions about things that are facing our country, and you would tell me your answers, it wouldn't be hard to figure out what you believe to be true and moral, the way you ought to behave. That's your religion. Whatever form it takes, that's your religion. You shouldn't do that. Based upon what? Well, it's just wrong. Well, how do you know it's wrong? What's your basis for saying that? And we need to ask people these questions. These are leading questions to get people to re-examine what they believe, their fundamental beliefs. Why do you believe that? Where did you get it? How did you get it? Where did you hear it first? I'm just curious. I've never heard anybody talk about what you believe before, and I'm trying to find out what it is you believe. You ask them the questions. It gets the conversation going. So we must help folks to see that there is only one correct religious worldview. Again, Acts 26:18, where Paul says to, I'll skip some verses there, didn't I? He says to open their eyes and to turn them from darkness to light and from the power of Satan unto God, that they may receive forgiveness of sins and inheritance among them which are sanctified by the faith that is in me. So our task is to turn people from darkness to light. Colossians 1:13 translates us from the power of darkness into the kingdom of his dear Son. There's the broad way, there's the narrow way. Serving the servants to obey, whether of unrighteousness or whether righteousness. There's only two ways of living your life: light or dark, righteousness, unrighteousness. Open your eyes, blind your eyes, kind of a thing. That's just the way it is, and there is only one religion. There is only one truth. You don't get your truth. Now, you can have your opinions, but you don't get your own set of facts. A fact is a piece of information that it harmonizes with reality. I heard somebody say, a rather authoritative person say this, perception is reality. Oh, really? Step off the pinnacle of the temple and tell me what's going to happen. Well, I'm going to fly away. Oh, no, you're not. Not until you hit the ground. One glad morning when the sun fly away. That's when you'll fly away. But you won't fly away stepping off the pinnacle of the temple. I don't care if you believe in gravity or not. It's there. The Rock of Gibraltar doesn't believe in gravity, doesn't float away. Okay? So we have to get people to understand you have to think correctly. Otherwise reality is too painful. In the second place, we must demonstrate that existence demands an uncaused first cause with whom we must deal. In other words, materialists will say, and we've talked about this before, that before all of this came into existence, there was a little piece of something somewhere when there was nothing. And suddenly, something, abracadabra, caused it to explode. And there's no laws of physics to explain any of that. That's all conjecture. That's Santa Claus and Easter Bunny and the Tooth Fairy. You've got as much evidence for those three as you do for the first one that just it's exploded, and now here we are. An uncaused first cause. It demands it, because if there was ever nothing, why is there now something? I mean, okay, just not going to go into that too much. Hebrews chapter 3 and verse 4. For every house is builded by some man, but he that built all things is God. What's the source? God. For we know him that has said, Hebrews 10, vengeance belongeth unto me, I will recompense, saith the Lord. And again, the Lord shall judge his people. It is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of a living God. We have to convince people that this being exists and it's serious. It's not something to be taken lightly. And we have to show them, demonstrate to them, provide evidence for them from which they can draw a proper conclusion that there is an uncaused first cause, that he has revealed himself to us in some great amount of detail, and has a standard by which he expects us to live, and by which we will be judged. The law of cause and effect teaches us that every effect must have a cause prior to and greater than the effect itself. And what does that mean? That just simply means if you've got a 2011 GMC Terrain sitting out there in the parking lot like I do, it didn't just happen. Somebody somewhere made that thing. I know, strange, isn't it? Abracadabra, alakazam. I sure paid for it. I wished it just appeared in my carport. It didn't. I had to pay for it. Well, if I told you so, it just magically appeared, you'd call me crazy. You'd wait for the punchline, wouldn't you? All right, what's he going to say this time? All right. And you'd be waiting. I said, no, I'm serious. It just happened. You might check the VIN number, see if it's stolen. All right. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. There's your explanation. Now, there's a whole lot that flows off of that, but there's your basic explanation. This being has, in fact, revealed himself in rather personal ways. And I've listed a number of them there for you. That he's finally revealed himself as the Almighty God, Jehovah. Lord God Almighty, the Almighty God, a couple of different ways it's worded in the Bible. That's an interesting thing to look up, by the way. And he is the only God. Isaiah chapter 45 and 21. Tell ye, and bring them near. Yea, let them make counsel together. Who hath declared this from ancient time? Who hath told it from that time? Have not I the Lord? And there's no other God beside me, a just God and a Savior. There is none beside me. 1 Corinthians, Paul says, but to us there is but one God, the Father, of whom are all things, and we in him, and one Lord Jesus Christ, by whom are all things, and we by him. So there's no second possibility. There's only one God, the Lord God Almighty, identified himself as Jehovah, told us his personal name. Now again, folks disagree with that. But that doesn't change the fact of it. What evidence do you have for the God that you worship? We have eyewitness testimony. And there's sufficient evidence to demonstrate the fact that God in fact exists. Now, I want to say this, and I want to say this advisedly. There's no absolute proof. Absolute proof is this. That this is absolute. It exists. It's there. And I can show it to you. You can get it in your hands. You can't do that with God. But there's evidence from which we can draw the correct conclusion that somebody somewhere started this and he's identified himself. And again, that gets into a whole lot of Christian apologetics, which is a good field of study, by the way. But the fact is, there is evidence. As a matter of fact, you look at atheists and theists, people that don't believe in God, that a personal God exists, and people that do believe that a personal God exists. They both have the same pile of facts to look at and to reason about and draw a conclusion. Well, how do they draw their conclusion? Well, first of all, they're prejudiced. They don't want, matter of fact, they'll tell you, I don't want a God to exist, because if a God exists, then there's something I have to do, and we'll look at that here in just a moment. I'm responsible to somebody else. I answer to somebody else. He's the creator. John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God, and all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. If it's been made, God made it through Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit. Colossians 1:17, and he is before all things, and by him all things consist. I read an article years ago The scientists say there's something below the subatomic level that they can't see that holds everything together. It's the glue that keeps it all together. Colossians 1:17, by him all things consist. They're held together. He is the power that keeps it together. When he says it's not going to be together anymore, it's going to separate. And you're going to have a super nuclear explosion, and everything's going to burn up. If you don't agree with nuclear, that's fine. I'm not sure that's it either, but it's going to be a lot of energy being released. So, we must stress accountability. We must stress accountability. There will be a judgment. I've listed three passages, Matthew 25 and 31, and 2 Thessalonians 1:6, and Revelation chapter 20, verse 11. Each one of those describe the absolute end of days, end of time, and the moments of judgment. Those three good passages. I would suggest you look at them, put them down parallel, and compare them, and get all the facts together for yourself and look at it. Why is this important? Why is the idea of judgment important? Why is it? It's not just merely important, it's absolutely critical. Why? Without a final accountability, there is no rationale for any particular behavior. There is simply no right or wrong. There's your likes and my likes. If God doesn't exist and there is no final judgment where we're going to stand before the judgment seat of Christ and the books are going to be opened and we're going to be held accountable for the things we've done, thought, and said, then why do or not do anything? There's no reason to do or not to do anything other than, well, I just felt like doing it, so that's what I did. Or I didn't feel like doing it, so that's why I didn't do it. Well, you shouldn't do that. Well, who are you to tell me what I should or shouldn't do? That's what you've got. You have an absolute mess. You have anarchy. Romans 4:15, because the law worketh wrath, for where no law is, there's no transgression. It's just your opinion and my opinion. There's no right or wrong. Murdering a human being, stepping on a cockroach would have the same, they're equivalent. If there is no final judgment. If God doesn't exist, then you're no better or worse than a cockroach. In value, why are you more valuable than a cockroach would be? If God doesn't exist and there is no final accountability. If we're all just an electrified bag of meat in motion, that's what you have. That's what you have. Now, when you put it that way, oh, no, that's not, you're right, that's not right. Now, why is that not right? That's the question. Why is it right to believe that a supreme being exists and started all this into motion? There's your discussion. Now, and I'm not saying just jump into it because you've heard this sermon. I'm saying you got to do some reading and studying on the thing because you got to know what people, you got to know how to answer folks and what to say and have something intelligent to say. Yet, all of this, at the very least, we violate our own conscience. Paul in Romans chapter 2, verse 12 beginning, he says, for as many as have, chapter 2, verse 12 beginning, for as many as have sinned without law shall also perish without laws. You may be living someplace and there's no law. There's no marshal or sheriff or judge walking around checking up on you. For not the hearers of the law are just before God, but the doers of the law shall be justified. For when the Gentiles, which have not the law, speaking of the law of Moses, do by nature the things contained in the law, you shouldn't murder people, steal their stuff. These, having not the law, are a law unto themselves. Now, again, I go back to my time working in the county jail. There were people that were certifiably insane. We had one guy come in, I've told you this before, I'm going to tell you again because it fits. He was basically catatonic. Now, you could get him to go stand in the corner. If you stood him in the corner and you came back tomorrow, he'd still be in the corner. Now, he had something in his hand. I don't remember. Tried to get it from him. No. You got almost going to get into a fight getting it from him. We finally got away from him. I don't remember what it was or how we did it, but we got away from him. And once it was out of his hand, there was no problem. He just went back. But he didn't want you to have whatever it was in his hand. Okay? Even those folks, you can't take my stuff. I'm going to keep it from you if I can. All right. So even folks like that a baby's got a pacifier. Take that pacifier out of the mouth. What do you got? You got an upset child. That's my passing. I want it back. For when the Gentiles, which have not the law, do by nature the things contained in the law, these having not the law are a law unto themselves, which show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness, and their thoughts the meanwhile accusing or else excusing one another. Man, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that. Shouldn't have been there, kind of thing. I wish they hadn't done that. I wish I could go back. That's the conscience. That's the conscience. Even people that are psychopaths, sociopaths, they don't care about you. You're just somebody gets in their way. You do something to them, it upsets them. You shouldn't do that. They think nothing of stealing something from you, taking it from you. Just walking up and taking it off of you. They think nothing about that. But you take it back. Well, you can't have that. It's mine. No, you took it from me. I know it's mine now. You can't have it back. See, even they have a standard of right and wrong. We think it's warped, and it is, but they have a standard of right and wrong, and that's what Paul is saying. That everybody has a standard by which they live. Now, again, it don't make sense, but they have it. And then in verse 16 he says, in the day when God shall judge the secrets of men by Jesus Christ according to the gospel. So the question for the materialists, where did this sense of oughtness come from? And a Darwinist, someone who believes in the theory of evolution, they can't explain beauty. They can't explain love. They can't explain joy. They can't explain humor. They can't explain any of that. Well, it just evolved. How do you know? Well, we've got it. We've got it. Where did it come from? They can't explain it. They cannot explain it. And that's the problems that they have. And all of this, we're stressing accountability. We are peeling back this onion, and we're getting down to the nub of this matter. That we have to get people to rethink their view of reality and ultimate outcomes. We have to get them to think about it. Now, it may take a while for them to get around to where they're willing to talk with you more about it, but we have to get them to change their minds about how they think their lives ought to run. Otherwise, we're going back to the carnal mind that we talked about in Romans chapter 8 there. Consequences for behavior are real issues with which one must contend. You'll either do it now or you do it later, and I don't care if you don't believe in eternity. You will. The rich man and Lazarus, the rich man opened up his eyes in torments, and he said, he knew he was in a bad way. And I still, in my mind, think about the terror. And how do you even start to think about the abject terror that man had when he opened up his eyes in torments and realized where he was? And it wasn't going to get any better. And if I understand scriptures, it's going to get worse. I don't know how torments, when it's tossed into Gehenna, gets worse, but as I understand scriptures, there are people beaten with many stripes and people beaten with few stripes. You're still getting a beating, but there appears to be degrees. I'm not interested in any of it. I don't want any beating, much less, but this is what we have. And we have to convince people that how you live your life here has a bearing. It matters. It's a serious issue. And there are people, we've discussed them even today, that are going into eternity unprepared to meet judgment. And we have to at least, what do you say? I think this is the starting point. And we can discuss more about it if you want to, in a classroom situation if you're interested. But this is just that serious. And there's nobody qualified to teach them the truth besides us. Because, what must I do to be saved? That's a simple question. But you line people up around this wall and you get that many different answers from all these religious groups out there. Matter of fact, I was talking with a lady the other day that I was ordering her books, a bookstore up in Cleveland. I was ordering her particular book, and we got to talking about Christian apologetics. And I asked for about one particular book I used as a textbook in school of preaching called Four Major Cults. Jehovah's Witnesses, Seventh-day Adventists, Mormons. Did I say Jehovah's Witnesses? Okay. I'd have to write them down to make sure I got them right. And she said, I used to be a Mormon. So we talked about that. and their view of Jehovah is like this to what the Bible teaches. Now, if they're listening, they're going to be insulted. It's not my intention to insult you. But I studied with some Mormon elders one time, and I held up a hymn book. I said, let's just say that this is a particular denomination's creed book. If I study this with my Bible, what will I become? Well, you'd become that creed book, what the title. And I went down through a number of them. And I reached on the back of my shelf and got off Pearl of Great Price, Doctrines and Covenants, and the Book of Mormon. I pulled them out. I said, now what if I study all of this with my Bible? Well, you'd become a Mormon. What if I just studied this? What would I be? And these two fellows looked at each other and they had no idea. They did not have an answer. And I said, I'd just be a Christian, wouldn't I? Yeah, they didn't like it, but that's what it was. I said, that's exactly right, and that's what I am. And that's what we need people to be, just a Christian. There is no hyphenated Christianity. Somebody says, well, what kind of a preacher are you? And I said, a faithful one? Maybe a statement of pride, I don't know, but whatever. The river of life continues to flow without apparent concern for we who navigate its currents. It's just like Old Man River out there, Mississippi River. The song just keeps rolling along. That's life. That's the way life is. It's just a thing, if you will. Souls depart every moment for an eternity they're not prepared to meet. And our job is to, if nothing else, don't go there. The ice is thin, the bridge is out, whatever you choose to use to describe it. But we have to tell people, we have to at least warn them. We sing a hymn, you never mention him to me. Read the words of that hymn. Read the words out loud to yourself. And then on the day of judgment, sheep and goats, and somebody over here is going to look around and say, hey, you didn't mention him to me. Of course, he may not be leaning that far over to look. He may just be looking next to himself. And that's the tragic part. We're not going to convert everybody. Paul didn't convert everybody. Go back and read Acts chapter 17. When his sermon was done, verse 31, 32, 33, when his sermon was done, how many folks did he have? He had a handful of people. I think probably, if you look at it, probably less than 10. I'd have to go back and count them again. But it wasn't a lot. Wasn't a lot. Wasn't a lot. Few there be that find it. That's the point. The Christian's task is to warn and inform as many as possible. Our job is to preach the gospel and baptize the believers. And that's our job. That's our job, is to tell people. Again, what do you say to them? Again, that's ask them questions about what they believe and why they believe it. Ask them to do. You don't say, well, defend yourself. You don't do that. But you ask questions that they have to give you an answer for. And that's what we do. That's the only way it's going to work. So anyways, if you're not a child of God, become one. We're all members of the Lord's church here as far as I'm aware. So I just simply say, if there's something we can do, pray for you, open up our Bibles and study, whatever it is you need. That's what we're here for. Those that are listening may want to have some questions they want answered. They're posted on the Facebook page. Send us an email. Call here at the church house, leave a message on the answering machine, and we'll get back to you. But our job is to help people find the truth. So if you need to respond to the invitation of Christ, we invite you to come. All together we stand.